So many questions still need to be answered here. More as we learn more news today. The family of this 16-year-old deserves those answers. Joining us now, an attorney for Ralph Yar's family, Lee Merritt. Mr. Merritt, thanks so much for taking time today.
Thank you all for covering this important story.
Let's begin with what we learned just now from our reporter on the ground. That is that the apparent shooter here held by police for less than 2 hours, though by local statute they can be held for up to 24 hours. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think that's the first clear. We're dealing with a justice system that is not prepared to treat this crime as seriously. Now, we don't know the reason for that, but there's no way that a man shoots an unarmed teenager and admits to it that that we haven't heard that Ralph posed a threat to this homeowner, shoots him, and then goes home a couple of hours later after giving a statement. That is a clear indication that something is going wrong.
Other thing we learned just in the last hour, this is through CNN's reporting, that the apparent gunman here, the apparent shooter, a white man in his 80s, identified via property records by CNN. We should note CNN is not naming the man here. You heard the police chief there saying that she understands there are racial components to this. What does that mean to you?
Well, like you all, I can't confirm who the suspect actually is. I know that there's rumor that it's a white male in his 80s, and that's confirmed by the home records that may have been the suspect. But we're still waiting for law enforcement to formally identify who this man is. It's an important first step in the investigation because we will know more about his motivations and his actions if we know specifically who he is. But there's a racial component in this case because we always see a disproportionate use of force and violence. Black men, Black people in general, Black young men specifically, and then the law enforcement's response to justify the shooting, essentially releasing the shooter, is again a pattern that we've seen too often.
Let's talk about Missouri law for a moment here. It has what's known as a stand your ground law, and it states, I want to quote from it so we're clear, a person may use physical force upon another person when and to the extent he or she reasonably believes such force to be necessary to defend himself or herself or a third person from what he or she reasonably believes to be the use or imminent use of unlawful force by such a person. Based on your reading of this law, does the apparent gunman here have any protection under Missouri law?
The use of force statute, the Castle Doctrine, the stand your ground doctrine under the laws of Missouri are completely inapplicable to this case because there has been no conversation, not from the suspect, not from the victim, and not from law enforcement, that Ralph Yarl at 16 years old ever posed a threat to this shooter.
How have courts in the past, in your experience, defined that key term there of reasonably? What is the precedent here for deciding when that force is reasonable, when it's unreasonable?
The court considers what is reasonable according to what an average person in this situation. And we know that in your home, your rights are the most elevated. So when you're at home, the court's going to say you have the most right to protect yourself. However, at the front door, when someone rings the doorbell, as the evidence demonstrates happen, then you're aware that someone may be out there. You can't just respond to someone knocking or ringing. Force, the knocking or the ringing of your doorbell is not enough force to permit you to respond with deadly force. It simply won't be covered under the law.
Well, listen, it's developing very quickly. I'm sure we'll be coming back to you as we learn more about the case. Lee Merritt, thanks so much for taking the time today. Please do extend our best to the family.
Will do. Thank you for having me.